What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Stochastic channel. Today we're talking college football DFS ahead of the Week 8 Wednesday slate. 2 games, about as greasy as it comes. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so knowing this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks today. For new users, they have a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. And they're going to give you 1 free month of Odd Shopper. This tool is going to give you access to all sorts of player prop projections, sports betting tools, anything to help you with your sports wagering, all the way down to the player performance level, which PrizePicks has. College football, NBA, NFL is going on, NHL's back, all of that. We have it. Click the link in the video description below. You must be 21 or older. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, we'll bring you behind the glass for this 2-game slate, kicking off with a real banger here. Florida International taking on Sam Houston State. 5-point spread in favor of Sam Houston, who is yet to record a win. Interesting to see them favored, and they're taking money. 40.5 total in this game, so really low. FIU 55th in pace. They pass 49% of the time. Sam Houston, 92nd in pace. They have a 55% pass rate, largely because they've been getting crushed in all their games so far this year. First and foremost, this is a really tough slate for quarterback. There is one clear play in Diego Pavia. Everyone else has a hole you can poke in them. So I don't think you necessarily need 2 quarterbacks on this slate. We'll start with Keon Jenkins for Florida International. 6,200 on DraftKings. The guy actually has pretty good efficiency for being a freshman. 244.5 passing yards per game on 27.3 attempts. The problem is he plays behind like a bottom 5 offensive line in the entire country. So he does have some rushing ability, but he's taken 24 sacks. This is going to be a problem for him all season long. So the rush yards 48 doesn't really tell you the whole story. The guy has good mobility, but this offensive line is absolutely horrific. That makes Keon Jenkins pretty tough to roster. He's firmly in the GPP category for those of you playing tournaments. The backfield for Florida International is a straight 50-50 committee. You have Shamari Lawrence averaging 10.6 touches per game. Keon Owens comes in at 8.8. Shamari Lawrence has a slightly better route rate, so I think you could look to him as the preferred pass catcher, but it's still even close there. On FanDuel, this is a no-brainer. Lawrence is very cheap compared to Owens, but on DraftKings, they're tight, and I don't have a strong preference between either of them. I would just be playing the one that makes sense in your lineups. These are pretty good plays overall. The running back slate is weak. You've got the UTEP guys up top, and then it's basically take your pick of the rest. And I would make this sort of a last man in situation, but don't mind these FIU backs. Sam Houston is allowing 4.6 yards per rush attempt, so not great run defense. At receiver, it's basically Chris Mitchell and then everybody else. He's averaging 91 yards per game on 7.6 targets. I don't think the slate is really tight in terms of pricing, so he's a priority for me. Beyond that, Jalen Bracey should be your wide receiver too. His route rate's been pretty consistent, but he's only touched 70% of the routes once, and that was in week 1. He's actually been below that in every other game this year, but he's pretty firmly in that 60 to 70 range. Where it gets interesting is beyond that. Dean Patterson and Eric Rivers have been bouncing all over the board in terms of their routes. They actually both were at 71% last game, so you can tell they were ahead of Bracey slightly. This team runs 4 wide most of the time, but there's really nothing that differentiates Bracey, Patterson, and Rivers at this point. You've seen Bracey's routes drop a little bit, and then Patterson and Rivers jump, and the targets between them, at least over the last 3 games, is pretty consistent. Bracey's averaging 3, Patterson 3, Rivers 3.5. So not much to see here. Tight end is a 3-way rotation. Rocky Beers, Josiah Meeman are the 2 main ones, but you also have Jackson McDonald in the fold. It's pretty tough to roster any of these guys outside the showdown. Sam Houston, I don't even know if it's the showdown. I think we have 1 showdown tonight. I don't remember. One of these is the showdown. Anyway, Sam Houston, Keegan Shoemaker at 6,600. Pretty decent play on this slate. Like, he flat out might be the QB2, which is amazing to say at this point. But 205 pass yards per game on 35 attempts. The efficiency is poor, but the volume's been there. He runs a little more than I thought he would. 103 rushing yards this year. He's only taken 5 sacks. So the offensive line is held up for the most part with Shoemaker. It's the efficiency that's the problem. View him as a high floor, low ceiling type player on this slate. Don't think he's going to get you 300 yards, or at least I'd be surprised. And that's considering FIU's defense is horrible. 8.4 yards per pass attempt, 5.1 yards per rush attempt allowed for FIU's defense. In the backfield, notoriously down their top 6 backs last week, John Gentry projects to return here, but the language on his status wasn't clear. I think he might be playing through this injury and not be 100%. But with that said, like this team is so hurt at running back. I don't know what else they're going to do. They gave him 30 carries in the third most recent game. Second most recent game, he promptly got hurt after 4, and then he missed last game. No other back really has this kind of upside. Last week, without Gentry, we saw Tobias Weaver 5 carries, Adrian Murdaugh 5 carries. They're clearly behind Gentry in terms of talent, but like this team just turned to the air with Gentry out. So I don't know what they're going to do at running back. I'm guessing he comes in and handles a decent workload. Probably nothing close to 30 carries. That's what got him hurt in the first place. Receiver, Sam Houston's also been down their top 2 pass catchers for most of the year, but that's allowed Noah Smith to assert himself as the lead pass catcher. He's now averaging 9.8 targets per game over the last 4 contests. Hasn't seen fewer than 11 targets in any of those. It's also allowed Malik Phillips and Alvonte Woodard to work into a very clear role for this team. Their routes have solidified quite a bit. Before, when we had Ife Adeyi in the lineup, we saw a pretty nasty rotation, but now it's condensed for this team. And if you're looking for the tight end, that's Elijah Sohn. He had a 65% route share last game. So it's very clearly these top 4 guys. And once you get beyond that, it's pretty gross. Some of you may look to Simeon Evans' 7-target game last week. All I'll say is he had a 29% route share. He was very clearly behind Woodard, who was at 87, and Malik Phillips, who was at 100. Noah Smith was at 90. So pretty clear to me where to go. All right, before we move to the second game, I'm not going to forget to tell you guys how to look at these tools till the end. If you want, the links in the video description below. It has access to this document, so you don't have to pause the video, look at this, squint, whatever it is you guys do when you watch these. You can look at it yourself for as long as you want or as short as you want. And that with the package, you also get projections, ownership projections, access to our Discord where I answer all questions. I try to answer everything on Twitter, but sometimes I can't get to them all. Discord is the priority. But anyway, link is in the video description below. I take care of all these tools myself, so it's a great way to support if that's something you're looking to do as well. If you've already supported, thank you. It means a lot, and I very much appreciate it. New Mexico State UTEP, 3.5-point spread in favor of New Mexico State, 48.5 total. 2 totals below 50 points. Here we go, guys. New Mexico State, 126th in pace, 46% pass rate. UTEP, they're 97th in pace with a 45% pass rate. Starting with New Mexico State, Diego Pavia has electric mobility, 429 cumulative yards this year. Also very efficient as a passer, although he lacks volume, just 23.5 attempts. 231 yards. I mean, he's averaging more yards than Keegan Shoemaker on 10 fewer attempts per game, more than that. He's locked in for cash games. He's the one quarterback I'm making a priority. Whether you want to play a second one's up for debate. Because Pavia runs so much, it has cannibalized these running backs. They use 3 of them. Star Thomas, 10.4 touches per game. Jamani Jones, 5.7 touches per game. Monty Watkins, 4.7. UTEP's allowing 5.2 yards per carry, so I think they're all live for tournaments. Would try to find a way to start Thomas if you can, but I'm not prioritizing him. I would rather get the elite receivers than start Thomas and play a guy like Pavia. So if you need to make a sacrifice, he would be somebody I'm looking to actually do just that with. Get get Mitchell, get Noah Smith, and get someone like Kelly Akari on the other side of the game. Receiver for this team, they don't get a lot of volume, but Pavia has excellent big play ability, so these guys pop up for big games quite a bit. Jonathan Brady is your number 1. He's only averaging 4 targets per game, 48 yards. Your wide receiver 2 in terms of opportunity has been Trent Hudson, 25 targets. He's averaging 44.5 yards per game. But the wide receiver 2 in terms of routes has actually been Cordell David. He leads the team with a 70% route share. Just hasn't always led to targets, but I think we can have some confidence in him after a 7-target game last time out. Those are your top 3. They also rotate in guys like Chris Bellamy, Jordan Smith when he's healthy. Hasn't really been that this year. Jordan Parker when he's healthy. Bryce Childress as well. So it's not just these players. You'll see a lot of guys out there. Eli Stowers has also been playing a lot of receiver. You flat out can't play him because he is a quarterback tag. But as you can tell, they rotate a lot. I would rank them 1 Brady, 2 David, 3 Hudson in terms of price-adjusted values. Going to UTEP. Gavin Hardison expected out again. Jake McNamara also hurt. We saw Cade McConnell play really well in his first game. He doesn't run a ton, but the guy was hyper efficient as a passer. These players are always hard to evaluate because now New Mexico State has a game of film on him. The prior opponent didn't. Sometimes these quarterbacks come out and they play really well in a small sample before film is out. So I don't know. He's a solid play for tournaments because of this. I think probably the second best price-adjusted play. It's between him and Keegan Shoemaker, but I mean, there's debate to be had. He also doesn't run as much as Shoemaker on this small sample. The UTEP offensive line is awesome. So what they've done in a lot of these cases is just run the ball. 45% pass rate. They're leaning on Hankins and Burgess, which makes them the top 2 running backs on the slate. 19 carries apiece for these guys. UTEP's taking a ton of money. They don't use the running backs in the pass game a lot. These players will pass block a ton. So don't expect a lot of receptions from either one. Burgess, he has 11 targets on the year, which is decent. He has a slight edge over Hankins in that regard. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. New Mexico State, 4.4 yards per carry to opposing backs. I think you can play them both in the same lineup. It's just a 2-game slate. The only thing there is pricing. You might not be able to get the elite receivers, which I'm trying to do. I think they're difference makers on the slate. One of which is Kelly Akari. He has 10 targets back-to-back games. We're not expected to see Tyron Smith. I think he's going to redshirt after playing in just 4 games this year and still injured. So we'll see. Jaden Ballard, he's the number 2, still averaging 7.3 targets per game over the last 4. Akari is at 5.8. So it's pretty close between these guys. The wide receiver 3 has become a rotation, not something I have a lot of interest in. Last week, Marcus Bellin, 45% of routes. Amari White, 30% of routes. And they don't use a third wide receiver in every snap. Fullback Julian Lopez participated in 35% of routes, just for reference. They also use some tight ends. So it's like you've got Ballard, you've got Akari, and then everyone else rotates because of the personnel packages UTEP uses. That'll do it for us today. Let me know in the comment section what you think of these games. If there's any plays I missed, would love to hear. Otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow for another 2-game slate, Friday for a showdown, and then, of course, the main slate. Until then, if you want to reach out on Twitter, I'm at Matt_Gajewski. Feel free to ask anything you might want to. Until next time, good luck, everyone. We'll see you then.